I never meant to spend that much time at Liam's house. It started with a weekend sleepover, video games, pizza, and late-night banter. Then one weekend turned into a week, and somehow I found myself waking up in their guest room more mornings than I did in my own bed. Liam was my best friend since sophomore year. We clicked instantly. He was funny in a chaotic kind of way, always loud, always moving. His house had this strange calm about it. Quiet, structured. Almost like someone had planned it that way. Someone like his father, Adrian. I never called him Mr. Walker, even though I was supposed to. Liam never cared. To him, his dad was just that, some middle-aged guy who paid bills, made protein shakes, and watched sports way too loudly on Sunday nights. To me, Adrian was something else entirely. He wasn't what I expected a father to be. Not stiff or awkward like mine. Adrian had presence. He entered a room like he owned it, but never with arrogance. There was a steadiness about him, every movement deliberate, every sentence measured. Salt and pepper hair, always groomed. Forearms that hinted at regular gym sessions. A voice like low thunder. At first, I just noticed. That's all it was. Just noticing. Then I caught him noticing me back. It wasn't obvious. Adrian wasn't careless. But there were moments, small ones, that lingered longer than they should have. A glance held a second too long. A comment that felt heavier than the words themselves. One time, he passed behind me while I was bent over Liam's laptop, and his hand grazed the back of my shoulder. Just a touch. But enough to freeze me in place. I told myself I imagined it. Liam never picked up on anything. He was too busy being 20, chasing girls, skipping classes, laughing too loud. Sometimes, I envied how unaware he was. How uncomplicated everything seemed in his world. One night, the air shifted. We'd been watching movies, some dumb action flick Liam insisted on. He fell asleep sprawled across the couch. I got up to grab water, tiptoeing through the dark kitchen. The house was silent, except for the hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of old floorboards. Then I saw him, Adrian, standing by the sliding glass door, nursing a glass of something amber and strong. Couldn't sleep? He asked, not turning around. I froze, water glass in hand. Yeah. Movie was loud. A beat of silence. He finally turned to face me. The dim kitchen light caught just enough of his face, shadows curling under his eyes, jaw clenched with thought. "You're here a lot lately," he said, not unkindly. "I guess," I replied, voice low. "It's easier. My mom's working nights. Feels better being here." He nodded slowly. "Liam's lucky. Having you around. You keep him grounded." I didn't know what to say to that. My throat tightened. I watched the way his fingers curled around the glass, the way he leaned slightly against the door frame, casual but deliberate. He wasn't just making conversation. "I'm lucky too," I heard myself say. I regretted it instantly. But he didn't flinch. He just studied me like I was a puzzle half solved. Then quietly, "You're a thoughtful kid, Noah." That word hit weird. Patronizing? Protective? Endearing? I couldn't tell. "I'm not really a kid," I said, unsure why I needed him to know that. His mouth twitched, almost a smile. "No. I suppose you're not." The silence after that wasn't awkward. It was heavy. Suspended. Like something was deciding whether or not to fall. Eventually, he turned back to the glass door. "Better get some sleep." I nodded, heart hammering in my chest. "Yeah. Good night." I walked back to my room, but I didn't sleep. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, wondering what that moment had been. If it was anything at all. Or if I was just desperate to find meaning where there was none. The next morning, nothing was said. Liam talked about going to the lake, about some girl from his class who kept texting him. Adrian read the paper, sipped his coffee, asked us if we wanted breakfast. Same as always. Except I couldn't stop watching him. And he caught me once, eyes flicking up just as mine darted away. That glance. That single, wordless glance. It wasn't about love. Not yet. It wasn't even about want, not exactly. It was about the space between those things. The space where curiosity and restraint live, where silence is louder than touch. It was about two people quietly realizing they saw each other differently than they were supposed to. And something in me knew, this was only the beginning. Liam left on a Thursday afternoon. He had plans to visit his mom in the city, something about brunch and guilt-tripped bonding. He didn't ask if I'd be okay staying behind. He just assumed I would, the way he always did. "Dad's cool with it," he said, tossing his duffel bag into the trunk. "And you basically live here anyway." He grinned, slapped my shoulder, and drove off before I could second-guess it. And just like that, the house became quiet. Still, a kind of stillness that makes you aware of your breathing, of your footsteps, of every accidental glance across a hallway. Adrian worked from home that day. I could hear the occasional murmur of his voice through the office door, low and clipped, professional, authoritative. He didn't come out until dinner, and even then, he was quieter than usual. Measured. Like we were both waiting to see who would speak first. We ordered Thai. Sat across from each other in the dining room while the ceiling fan whispered above us. He asked about school, I asked about work. Polite. Surface level. Then he leaned back in his chair, chopsticks resting in his fingers, and said, "You're comfortable here." It wasn't a question. I swallowed a bite of rice, nodded. "Yeah. It feels different. But good different." His eyes held mine a moment longer than necessary. "I'm glad." That night, I heard him pacing. Floorboards creaked rhythmically outside my room, like he was walking in circles, thinking, maybe. Or trying not to. The next morning, I woke late. Sunlight spilled across the hardwood, warm and golden. I padded into the kitchen, still in sweats, hair messy, and found Adrian at the counter. No shirt. Just black joggers and a coffee mug in hand. His back was to me, muscles shifting as he reached for the sugar. A small scar traced his right shoulder blade. I had never noticed it before. He turned when he heard me. His eyes dropped briefly to my chest, bare beneath my loose t-shirt, then flicked back up without apology. "Coffee?" he asked. "Sure." He poured me a cup. Our fingers brushed as he handed it over. That single point of contact burned hotter than the mug itself. We stood in silence, both sipping. The kitchen was quiet except for the hum of the fridge and the distant call of a lawnmower from somewhere outside. "You're different from Liam," he said suddenly. I looked at him, surprised. He continued, "Not better. Just tighter. More aware of things." I felt the compliment hit somewhere deep. I think too much. That's not always a bad thing. There was again his tone. Like his words carried extra weight, an undercurrent he wasn't willing to say out loud. But I heard it. I felt it. That afternoon, I worked on a sketch at the dining table. Adrian passed by once, then again, slower the second time. Finally, he stopped behind me. "Is that me?" The question made me flush. I hadn't meant to make it obvious. It wasn't exactly a portrait, but the figure had Adrian's sharp jaw, his shoulders, the tension in his posture. "I guess I was just inspired," I mumbled. He stepped closer. Close enough that I could feel the heat of his breath on my neck. "You've got an eye," he said quietly. "You see things most people miss." I didn't respond. Couldn't. He lingered there a beat longer, then walked away. That evening, he opened a bottle of red wine. Said it had been a long week. Poured me a glass without asking. I hesitated, then took it. We sat in the living room, the air thick with something unnamed. "You don't talk much about your family," he said. I shrugged. "Not much to say." He nodded like he understood. "Sometimes it's easier with other people's houses." "Yeah," I said. "Yours feels safe." The word hung in the air like a challenge. Adrian tilted his head slightly. "Does it?" I didn't answer. He didn't press. The wine blurred the edges of everything. Thought. Restraint. Later that night, I went to the kitchen for water and found him already there. The lights were dim. He was leaning against the counter, staring out the window into the darkness. He turned when I entered. Said nothing at first. Then, quietly, "You have a calming energy." I let the words settle. "You notice details," I said. "So do I." Our eyes met. Something flickered there, uncertainty wrapped in desire. He took a step forward. Just one. Close enough to feel. Not close enough to touch. You should get some rest, he said, voice lower now. Okay, I whispered, throat dry. But neither of us moved. We stood there, suspended in that moment, knowing we were already too close. That something had shifted. That the air between us wasn't innocent anymore. Eventually, he turned and walked away. No words. No explanation. Just silence, thick and loaded. I stared at the empty space he left behind, heart pounding. Lines don't always snap. Sometimes they blur slowly, quietly, until you've crossed them and don't even remember when it happened. And I knew, without question, that I'd stepped across something I couldn't undo. It rained the night everything changed. Not a soft drizzle, but a heavy, relentless storm. The kind that makes the world feel smaller, like it's folding in on itself. Thunder rolled across the sky in slow, moaning waves. I watched the downpour from my window, glass fogged from my breath, and the weight of what hadn't happened yet pressed against my chest like gravity. I was supposed to be asleep. The lights were off. But I couldn't stop replaying that look, Adrian's gaze in the kitchen, the closeness, the pause before he walked away. Something was unraveling. Something neither of us had named, but both of us were walking toward. When the knock came, it was barely audible beneath the rain. Just a soft tap against the door, twice. My heart stopped, then kicked forward with such force I had to sit up. I opened the door slowly. Adrian stood there, barefoot, wearing a dark long-sleeve shirt and flannel sleep pants. His hair was damp, like he'd stepped outside for a moment. His expression was unreadable. Sorry, he said, voice low. Didn't mean to wake you. I wasn't sleeping, I replied. He hesitated. Power's out in half the house. Just checking you were okay. I nodded, but neither of us moved. He was still standing in the hallway, his hand resting on the doorframe. I could smell the rain on him, earthy, electric. You can come in, I said before I could stop myself. He did. The room felt smaller with him in it. More real. More dangerous. He looked around once, then sat at the edge of the bed, back straight, hands on his knees. I stayed by the window, unsure of where to place myself. We were alone, in a room that belonged to no one and everyone. A neutral space turned sacred. I couldn't sleep, he said. The words felt strange coming from him. Adrian never seemed like the kind of man who lost sleep. Me neither, I said quietly. He looked at me then. Not just a glance. He looked into me, through me. I keep thinking about last night, he admitted. I swallowed. Me too. The pause. Heavy. Thick. But this time, neither of us looked away. I don't know what this is, I said. But I can't pretend I don't feel it. He stood, slowly. Walked toward me with the careful grace of someone holding something breakable. When he stopped, he was so close I could feel the warmth radiating from him. Noah, he said, and my name in his mouth sounded like a confession. Then he reached up, gently, and cupped the side of my face. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a demand. It was permission. I leaned in first. The kiss was quiet, hesitant, like we both expected the world to end with it. When it didn't, we kissed again. And again. Everything after that blurred into sensation, skin against skin, breath against breath. We moved carefully, reverently, like we were afraid to wake from a dream. There was no rush. No clumsy desperation. Just discovery. Just heat in hands and the terrifying intimacy of being seen. When it was over, we lay in silence, side by side on the bed. The storm still roared outside, but in the room, there was only the sound of our breathing, shallow and slow. Adrian stared at the ceiling, his hand resting near mine, but not touching. He didn't speak for a long time. Then he said, I haven't felt something like that in years. I turned my head. What do you mean? He swallowed. I've been for so long. Marriage, work, fatherhood, it's all routine. Mechanical. I forgot what it meant to feel alive. There was no anger in his voice. No bitterness. Just exhaustion. I wanted to ask more. I wanted to understand the depth of what he meant. But I was afraid of the answers. So I said nothing. Eventually, he stood, slowly dressing in the dim light. I should go, he said. I sat up, the sheets falling away. Do you regret it? His eyes flicked to mine. No. But that doesn't make it right. I nodded, the ache already blooming in my chest. He walked to the door, then paused. I don't know what happens next, Noah, he said. But this wasn't nothing. And then he was gone. I sat there in the silence, sheets tangled around me, heart still thudding like it didn't know the moment was over. What we'd done wasn't impulsive. It wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. And choices have consequences. The next morning, I woke to birdsong and sunlight. The storm had passed, but the air still smelled of wet leaves and unsettled ground. Adrian was in the kitchen, reading the paper like nothing had happened. He looked up when I entered, eyes unreadable. Morning, he said. I nodded. Morning. No mention of the night. No lingering looks. He played the part well. But I could feel it. Underneath the calm exterior, something had cracked open. Liam would be back tomorrow. Time was running out. And I had no idea what to do with the truth now that it was real. The morning Liam returned, the house felt colder than it had in days. Not literally, it was warm, sun filtering through the windows, but something in the air had shifted. The weight of reality settled in like fine dust, clinging to everything. I felt it in my shoulders, in the silence between words, in the space between Adrian and me that now pulsed with unspoken history. He'd barely looked at me since that night. There were no more shared glances. No late conversations. No brushing past in hallways like it meant something. Just silence. And in that silence, a truth began to bloom, not loud, not dramatic. Just steady, relentless. The truth that what happened couldn't be undone. That it wasn't just a moment, it was a fracture. A split in the foundation of something we'd both pretended was harmless. Liam burst through the door around noon, arms full of bags and energy. City's exhausting, he said, dropping his stuff by the stairs. Mom talks nonstop. How do you people do this whole family thing every day? Adrian smiled faintly from behind the kitchen counter. Practice. Liam rolled his eyes and turned to me. You look like you haven't slept since I left. I laughed too quickly. Guess I got used to the quiet. We made lunch together. Sandwiches, chips, leftover fruit. Liam talked about his mom's new boyfriend, a yoga instructor named Brian who wore toe shoes and tried to connect emotionally over vegan cheese. Adrian chuckled at all the right moments. I tried to, but my heart wasn't in it. When Liam wasn't looking, I glanced at Adrian. He didn't meet my eyes. Later, I sat outside on the porch steps. The air was still, the world slow. A single leaf drifted down from the old oak by the driveway, spiraling like it didn't care where it landed. Adrian joined me without a word. He sat a few feet away, careful not to close the distance. We listened to the wind moving through the trees. Eventually I spoke. Are we just going to pretend it didn't happen? He didn't answer immediately. His gaze was fixed ahead, jaw tense. It can't happen again, he said. I nodded. I figured. The pause. Then, softer, it wasn't meaningless to me. That admission, quiet, buried beneath restraint, hit harder than anything loud could have. Me either, I said. He let out a slow breath. But Liam's my son. I closed my eyes. I know. His best friend. Practically family. I know. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was mournful. Like we were both standing at the edge of something we'd already walked away from. I think it meant something because it couldn't last, I said quietly. It was a moment outside of everything else. A moment we weren't supposed to have. Adrian turned his head. But we had it. We looked at each other then. And for the first time in days, the truth passed between us without guilt or fear. Just understanding. Just two people carrying a secret that wasn't malicious, but real. Eventually, Liam came out, phone in hand, sunglasses already on. Let's hit the lake before it gets crowded, he said, oblivious to the gravity in the air. Noah, are you coming? I hesitated. Adrian stood first. You two go ahead. I've got some work to finish up. Liam groaned. You work too much. I know. As Liam walked ahead, I lingered. Adrian caught my wrist gently, a moment too long, and whispered, Take care of yourself, Noah. There was something final in his tone. Not cruel. Not sad. Just finished. I nodded once and followed Liam down the steps. That night, after the lake, after the sunburns and shared jokes and beer by the water, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Liam was passed out across the hall. The house was still again. But not the same. What happened between Adrian and me wasn't a love story. It wasn't an affair fueled by recklessness or deception. It was something quieter. Something born from two people needing to be seen, even if only for a moment. Infidelity doesn't always look like betrayal. Sometimes, it looks like connection in the wrong place at the wrong time. Sometimes, it's not about what you take from someone else. It's about what you needed to feel human again. In the morning, I packed my things. Liam didn't ask why. He just hugged me like he always did and said, "See you in class." Adrian walked me to the door, hands in his pockets. We didn't say goodbye. We didn't need to. Because the truth had already been spoken, not in words, but in silence. In the way we didn't look back.